To which Smriti Irani came out and said that this is nothing but George Soros' imperialist mindset that has been exposed once again. Why is Prime Minister silent on the Adani crisis is what George Soros asked. To which the centre hit right back and said that George Soros is not one to talk because he is an agent of regime change. He wants a pliable, favourable government, and when he doesn't get it, this is how he responds. George Soros made another allegation against this government. He said that Modi government must answer foreign investors as far as the Adani crisis goes. To which the centre sternly replied that George Soros has invested $1 million to target Prime Minister Modi. He himself has spoken of this particular fund. George Soros alleged that he expects a democratic revival in the country. To which central government came out and said that democracy in India is strong and resilient and we do not need any sort of certificate from someone like George Soros. Listen in to what Smriti Irani, the Union Minister, had to say and the political reactions that followed.
George Soros, an international entrepreneur who hedges bets against many countries, has now declared his ill intentions to intervene in the democratic processes of India. Such is a time where the imperialistic intentions of an entrepreneur come to light, brings an onslaught to the economy of India, all so that he can personally. Those who support Mr. Soros need to know that democracy has prevailed in India and will continue to do so.
देखिए ये हो गया कि कोई खानदान परिवार का एक लड़का गलत रास्ते जाता है और कोई उसको टोकता है तो वो कहता है कि देखो मेरा खानदान बदनाम हो गया। अरे भाई, तू गलत करता है तो तुझे कोई भी टोकेगा। अगर आपके खिलाफ गलत टिप्पणी है, आपको गलत तरीके से रोका गया है, तो क्या रास्ता होता है? और आज अगर मोदी जी के खिलाफ कुछ भी होता है तो आप जांच से क्यों डरते हो? वो सिर्फ भाजपा के नहीं, मेरे भी प्रधानमंत्री है। शक दुनिया में उठा है तो जांच करवाओ, और अगर आप पाक साफ हो, आपका सब चंगा सी, अगर आपका अंदर कोई गलती नहीं है तो आपकी छवि और मजबूत होगी। क्यों डर रहे हो?
Now, the central government was very categorical when it came out and rebutted the allegations, the claims that have been made by George Soros. Smriti Irani also went on to say that this is nothing but a design to break India, to demonize India and malign the image of this country. There are at least 3 reasons why the central government says this is the case, and I want to list those 3 reasons out for you why George Soros cannot be taken at face value. Reason number 1 is back in 2020, not too long ago, George Soros pledged a $1 billion fund to fight what he claimed were nationalists. He said these were becoming so-called dictators across the world. He also named Prime Minister Modi as one of those alleged nationalists that he was talking of. Another reason is that he's accusing Prime Minister Modi of creating a Hindu nationalist state here in India. The third big reason of why he cannot be taken at face value is because the Indian government itself had put Soros' organization, the OSF, on a watch list back in 2016. So, when we see Congress's Rahul Gandhi and the Bharat Jodo Yatra walking with a man who's associated with one of the organizations or the OSF of George Soros, multiple questions arise. Those questions are arming the BJP. And let me open this up. Swapnil Kothari, lawyer, joining us on this broadcast. International affairs expert Rabindranath Sachdev also with me. An advocate and analyst, Tauseef Ahmad Khan, will be joining us shortly as well. But let me open this up and let me ask Rabindranath Sachdev. As far as this man, George Soros, goes, his antecedents are well known. We've seen the kind of commentary that he's made. We've seen the kind of money that he has pledged for a fund where he wants to fight the so-called nationalists. He says these are the people that go on to become dictators or so-called dictators. And Prime Minister Modi and India is one of the countries and one of the leaders that features in his hit list, so to say.
Yeah, thank you so much. See, I mean, where Soros is coming from, I think most of us or many of us know his, his leanings and what he's trying to do world over. He believes in a certain world order or a liberal of a particular kind, his own imagination kind, for which he established the Open Society Foundation, as you said, the OSF. Now, knowing what Soros is doing and coming from, I'll say a couple of things to what he said. That he said about revitalizing Indian democracy. I mean, please, please give me a break. The point is, but to that I would say, no democracy is perfect. Neither America nor the UK, French, German, or whatever. All democracies, all nations are a work in progress towards a certain perfection. So I would not say honestly that we are 100%, golden standard. If no nation is, we all have our, struggles which we are working through. So fine. I mean, so that's the way I would look at any of his talks about Indian democracy. Fine, we are marching to the beat of our own drummer. All nations, I mean, bring us any. There's no utopia out there, right? It's human coexistence. That's one.
Sure.
Secondly, I do feel that sometimes it may not be a bad idea to but in this case, the charges are pretty, outrageous. But sometimes it may not be a bad idea to let, barking dogs, quote unquote, pardon the expression, say, because the more we react to these, in which it depends how we react and what we put out, this controversy bubbles up. And I'll go back to the example of the BBC, right? The documentary of the BBC, which was out there. I don't know if the government really has even banned it. Okay, they told social media now to put it up, right?
Yeah.
But is the documentary banned? I don't know. But when that happened and this thing happened, it has been banned. The news headlines about the documentary were ricocheting around the world every day. That now, students are protesting. Now this is happening. Now this is happening. All because the government did this. So I'm not saying what could have been done, but maybe let the documentary be and just ignore it or sideline it. So sometimes those things, as a communication strategy purely, I'm saying, could be looked at. And lastly, I would say one more thing. China fell into a major trap of its image. The wolf warrior diplomacy, that for everything China would, hit back very harshly. And part of the reasons that China is in the doghouse today, my estimate is, starting from COVID, was because the West got a chance to corner China on the Wuhan virus. Okay. And then everything came tumbling out.
Sure.
India should kind of keep the same thing in mind. See, 50 years from today, we will be a number 2, someone else will be a number 1.
Sure.
The same game will be played against us. Some plague may come in India, natural maybe, but then our image in the world, if it is that, we are countering everything, we are very argumentative, suppose if we. So we got to walk a careful line, I feel, in terms of how we react to every bit which everyone says or publishes.
Sure. So there has to be a balancing act that needs to be maintained, but it is important to come out and try and dispel these kind of myths that are doing the rounds as well, Swapnil Kothari, isn't it? Because we live in an age where information comes easy. We have multiple sources of information. A lot of it is unfiltered. A lot of it is unverified. It all percolates down to the youth, the children, the very last man on ground in this country. When we're talking about claims as audacious as or as outrageous as Mr. Soros makes, there is a need to also come out and put forth what the Indian government stand is, or what India's stand as a whole should be, irrespective of its political ideologies.
Well, Poonam, these kind of remarks are not, just made off the cuff. There is a concerted effort across the international community, be it the editorial of the New York Times, be it Greta Thunberg's comment, be it I believe that musician's comment earlier, a couple of months ago, about some instability in India, about several things taking place in India which are not democratic, and now Mr. Soros' comment about some sort of a democratic revival. I think the word revival, and he is not somebody who's not used to the English language, and he needs to be more careful when he uses words like this, when we are the biggest democracy in this world and an example for the whole world to follow, that we are 125 crore people and we can still maintain our democracy, as opposed to the United States, which is 300 crore people. They still rather 30 crore people, and they still manage the democracy the way we do, and we are still better off than that. But what I mean to say is that in this scenario, the comment made by our people are absolutely appropriate, that there is no such thing that he needs to talk about. He needs to be very careful as to whether Modi and Adani are close allies. I believe there are several presidents who have been great allies earlier with great corporate bigwigs in the United States as well, and even across the globe. Just because they are allies doesn't mean that they are party to each other or they are helping each other in that sense. So his insinuation is absolutely notorious. He's trying to link what has happened to Adani and what will happen to Adani as some sort of a democratic sort of a debacle as far as India is concerned. Now, I completely do not agree with that. Adani is one case on his own. He'll face the law if there is anything wrong in that. And I don't think the Indian democracy or the Indian capitalism, as what he says, crony capitalism, is going to be endangered in any form whatsoever. Now, if you notice that there is the headlines of this time's Economist is also Adani and capitalism in India. Now, you see, now, of course, when you read the editorial and read the whole entire story in The Economist, it's very balanced perspective. It's a very a neutral perspective. It's not telling you that the democracy is in shambles or anything of that sort. But I think this sort of a recent interest in one scam in India by the foreign people or by foreigners of some note, such as Mr. George Soros, or for that matter, even The Economist, or even for that matter, some editorials in prominent newspapers abroad. They seem to evoke some kind of an interest as far as I'm concerned, because I don't like this. I believe there is some sort of reverse engineering or some sort of backing which has been given by these people to people who want to foment trouble in this country.
Yes.
And there are that many people in this country. And always remember that somebody is always there from the inside to unbolt the latch. Only then the outsiders enter. That's how people entered. The Mughals entered. That's how the British entered in this country, and that's how some of these people could also enter.
Give people like George Soros a handle?
That's right.
Unwittingly, inadvertently, even if that is the case, why be in that position where you do that? And like I said earlier as well, it's not just about the government coming out and rebutting what George Soros is saying or clearing the air as far as setting the record straight goes. We as a country, as India, irrespective of our political ideologies, should be standing as one. And I want to get in Tausif Ahmed Khan as well as far as this entire controversy goes, because there is a political twist to all of this as well. Tausif Ahmed Khan, we've seen one of the associates of George Soros works for the OSF here in India. He was seen with Rahul Gandhi and the Bharat Jodo Yatra here not too long ago. Do you think there is an effort, perhaps unwittingly, like I said earlier, or maybe not, opposition parties here in this country are trying or perhaps ending up giving a handle to forces like George Soros at a time when they shouldn't be?
No, I would not say that, because the opposition in the parliament raised question regarding the Adani and the allegations of fraud, financial fraud, and the manipulation of the share market. You see, all these questions were raised by the parliamentarians inside the House of the Parliament, which should have been addressed by the Prime Minister, but Prime Minister did not choose to address it. Now, in the backdrop of that, we see George Soros, who is totally irrelevant to Indian politics. He is neither a Indian citizen nor in any way connected to India or Indian political parties. But at the most, what he can say, as he mentioned, that that Mr. Modi has to answer the foreign fundings, the people from abroad who are funding to Indian businesses, all the money that has been pumped in by foreign investors in Adani enterprises. Now, that is a valid question, but it is still relevant for the politician, for BJP as a political party, for BJP as the government, to respond in a way they have responded. By coming so hard, by responding in a way they have responded, they are only giving credence to what Mr. George Soros is saying. Otherwise, George Soros is totally immaterial and irrelevant to Indian politics. What Mr. Modi should do instead, what BJP ministers should do, is address all the questions raised inside the parliament by opposition leader like Mahua Moitra or Mr. Rahul Gandhi or other opposition leaders. They have been
questions have been raised. Questions have been raised, Tausif Ahmed Khan, by the opposition, like you mentioned, both inside and outside parliament. Whether the BJP or the central government comes out and responds or not, it's up to them. And we would have liked for a BJP representative to be here as well. But at a time when we have someone like George Soros trying to meddle, not just raise the Adani issue, but he's also trying to give us lessons on democracy. And it's rich coming from a person like that. At a time like this, shouldn't political parties keep their ideologies separate and stand as a country against a force like George Soros and say, you know what, mind your own business? You don't need to lecture us about democracy. Shouldn't that the message, Tawseef Ahmed Khan, be sent out as a country?
No, we did react. I am saying that the minister, a senior minister of the government, held a press conference and is addressing the statement made by Mr. George Soros. But why is BJP government so afraid? Instead of addressing Mr. Soros, Mr. George, the minister could have addressed all the questions by the Indian Parliament. Indian parliamentarians, every now and then they are raising questions. Even on Twitter there are questions. And we have seen how BJP ministers are so active on Twitter. Even a reply from the Prime Minister on the Twitter regarding Adani could have helped to boil down this controversy. By not addressing the questions being raised, and these are all valid questions because 30,000 crores of rupees invested by LIC is in Adani, and then SBI has exposure to Adani. Yesterday only Indian Oil has controverted the statement issued by Adani Enterprises.
Sure.
So, all of this, government cannot just ignore the questions, which is burning questions, which is concerning the future, or concerning the savings of crores of Indian people.
Sure.
And instead of addressing the questions of Indians, government has resorted to address a question posed by someone who is living in US, someone who calls himself a philanthropist, someone who calls himself a foreign investor. If the government is so concerned about how the foreign investors look at or perceive Indian companies, then government should be more transparent. Why is government opposed to joint parliament committee? Why?
Sure, so those questions still remain. The opposition continues to raise them, but as long as the opposition in this country does it, it is their right. They're well within their rights to do so as far as democracy allows them. But for someone like George Soros to come out and try and lecture us and meddle in India's internal affairs is something that will not be tolerated. And that's really the message that I think Smriti Irani was trying to send. The politics over this, of course, continues to boil over, but I'm running out of time. And I thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us here on this broadcast with your perspective. We are now shifting focus to some CNN News 18 mega exclusive. Pakistan is on the verge of bankruptcy. As we all know, the IMF team left without signing the bailout staff level agreement. CNN News 18 has now learnt that only $3 billion are left as foreign exchange reserves with our hostile neighbour. There is also a major shortage of life-saving drugs in the country, and trouble is only going to mount further with most of the allies of Pakistan dumping them. The latest that we are gathering is that the Talibani government of Afghanistan has also now mulling options to stop coal and dry fruit supplies to Pakistan given the crisis. Inflation is at a 4-decade high. Listen in to how the common man in Pakistan is suffering.
मुझे हुकूमत की कुछ समझ नहीं आ रही। हुकूमत आए दिन क्या कहते हैं, बिजली के रेट, क्या कहते हैं, पेट्रोल के रेट, दूसरी चीज़ें, ठीक है, जीना दुश्वार किया हुआ है। क्या कहते हैं, एक सैलरी वाला जिसकी 30,000 सैलरी है, ठीक है, अब उसका किराए का गाड़ा है, ठीक है, उसके 2 बच्चे हैं, बच्चों को किस तरह पढ़ाएगा, अपने लिए कुछ करे या बच्चों के लिए कुछ करे, फ्यूचर नज़र नहीं आ रहा, ठीक है, क्या करे। मुझे लगता है कि हमें ना अल्लाह पाक हमें इतनी ताकत है, हम पाकिस्तान ही छोड़ के चले जाए, कहीं चले जाए, क्योंकि अब यहाँ पर पाकिस्तान में रहना ना बहुत ही मुश्किल हो गया है, ठीक है। मेरी तो यही दुआ है, अल्लाह पाक हुक्मरानों को क्या कहते हैं, नेकी की हिदायत दे। अगर नेकी की हिदायत नहीं मिलती तो हमारी जान छोड़ दे, ठीक है, हमें तो सुकून का सांस लेने देना।
इस मुल्क के इतने घटिया हुक्मरान हैं, मैंने ऐसी नाअहल हुकूमत अपनी ज़िंदगी में आज तक नहीं देखी। इस नाअहल हुकूमत को इक़्तिदार में 10 माह गुजर चुके हैं और आवाम को रिलीफ देने के बजाय इन्होंने आवाम को महंगाई के बोझ तले दबा दिया है। इनका बस चलो तो ये आवाम की सांस लेने पर भी टैक्स लगा दे। मैं तो कहती हूँ इनको जहर दे देना चाहिए अपनी आवाम को, ताकि इनकी जान छूट जाए, हमारी भी जान छूट जाए, इनकी भी जान छूट जाए। हमारे से बाद में आज़ाद होने वाले मुल्क आज देखिए आप कहाँ खड़े हुए हैं। इंडिया कहाँ खड़ा हुआ है, बांग्लादेश देख लें, बांग्लादेश कहाँ हमसे आगे निकल गया, और ये मुल्क देख लें तरक्की करने के बजाय ये नीचे चला जा रहा है।
देखें जी, महंगाई की सूरत हाल तो ये है कि जो सैलरीड क्लास है, ये जो तनख्वाहदार तबका है, जो मेरी तरह है, पहले उसको मिडिल क्लास में गिना जाता था, लेकिन अब पाकिस्तान में 2 ही क्लासेस रह गई हैं, या अमीर हैं या गरीब हैं। जहाँ पे मैं 1000 रुपये के पेट्रोल में एक हफ़्ता दफ्तर आना जाना कर लेता था, अब वहाँ 1000 रुपये के पेट्रोल में मेरे 2 दिन भी नहीं गुजरते। थोड़ा सा आवाम को रिलीफ देना चाहिए कि आवाम का को ख्याल करें। पेट्रोल तो सिर्फ एक मिसाल है, पेट्रोल के साथ 1000 चीज़ें और मुंसलिक होती हैं, जिसमें रोज़मर्रा की अशियाएँ, खाने पीने की अशियाएँ, हर चीज़ महंगी होती है, तो इनको थोड़ा सा ख्याल करना चाहिए। तो थोड़ी आवाम पे मेहरबानी करें, को आवाम को भी सुख का सांस लेने दें।
लेकिन जी इस अब महंगाई ने पाकिस्तान में गरीब आदमी को इस कदर नुकसान पहुंचाया कि अब जैसे देखें कि खबरें चल रही थी कि आटा जो है वो पाकिस्तान में वो नायाब हो चुका है। तो इसी तरह पेट्रोल जैसे दिन ब दिन महंगा कर रहे हैं, हर 10-15 दिन बाद पता चलता है कि यार इतना पेट्रोल महंगा हो गया है। और हुकूमत की बात करें तो ये वही हुकूमत है जो महंगाई को ख़त्म करने के लिए जो है हुकूमत में आई थी, मगर इस हुकूमत ने आवाम को बिल्कुल कोई रिलीफ नहीं दिया।
My colleague Abhishek Jha joins me for more on this. Now, Abhishek, we've heard the testimonies coming out of Pakistan. The common man, the Aam Aadmi in Pakistan, is fed up. A solution is required. It's the need of the hour. But unfortunately, there is no consensus that was built as far as the IMF is concerned. And it looks like most of the allies or ally countries of Pakistan are ready to dump them. Not one country is wanting to help them.
And especially this is happening at a time when Pakistan is actually needing the allies and friends most. They have all sided along with IMF, which has not given another tranche of $1.1 billion to Pakistan because of Pakistan not accepting or agreeing to the terms that IMF had laid. IMF had asked Pakistan to bring down the cost of many public commodities. They have asked Pakistan to increase electricity tariff and reduce subsidy on petrol and diesel. They have asked Pakistan to cut defense budget by 10 to 20%. And these are the issues that Pakistani government cannot do at this time because economy is already in shambles. Inflation is all-time high. Essential commodities are costly. You just heard people in Pakistan talking about how their everyday life has become difficult because they can't afford petrol or flour or essential kitchen commodities. So in this condition, how can Pakistani government increase the tariff on petrol, diesel or electricity? Another thing is that cutting the defense budget to 10 to 15% is something that the political dispensation in Pakistan cannot take a call because we know how strong and how powerful military establishment in Pakistan is. In fact, Pakistani military establishment takes call how the governance system or the political system in Pakistan will work and not the other way around. So these are the issues that Pakistani nationals are currently facing that has been a problem of making for various years now. And the current situation doesn't seem like to be getting solved in near future.
Right, Abhishek. Thank you so much for getting us the latest on that. We have to quickly shift focus to more news that's coming in. Given to understand that there was a bit of a security scare for Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, where an unclaimed bag was found outside his residence. A bomb disposal squad is also at the spot. The investigation is on to ascertain what exactly was found in that bag. As you see on your screens, these are visuals from outside the residence of Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath in Lucknow. Officials on the spot claim that it was not a bomb scare, it was just a hoax, but they're still trying to ascertain what exactly is happening. The bomb disposal squad, as per protocol, is already on the spot. Information given at Delhi headquarters is also something that is being corroborated with. Pranshu, my colleague, is joining us for more details on that. Yes, Pranshu.
Well, yes, that's right. In fact, there is this bomb call that was aroused after an unclaimed suspicious object, probably a bag. The exact dimensions are not clear, were found around 300 meters before the Kalidas Marg, which is the official residence of the Chief Minister. Now, the viewer should know that the Chief Minister's residence, the 5 Kalidas Marg, that is closed from either sides, from both the ends, and therefore no common person, no routine vehicle can actually enter on the Kalidas Marg. So the exact location where this suspicious object or unclaimed bag was found has been found is outside the golf club, which is in fact at the tri-junction of the Kalidas Marg crossing, from where this Kalidas Marg road actually starts, on which there is this bungalow number 5, which is the official residence of the Chief Minister. More details are still awaited, but keeping that it's in a very VVIP secured area where this call has been received, the entire area has been cordoned off. The police and the LIU team and also the bomb disposal squad is there. So far, it seems that it is probably a hoax call, but since it's a matter which is related to a politician, to the Chief Minister, who is also who also has, high on the terror target by the terrorist organization, and therefore no risk is being taken. So more security is being enhanced even as we speak around the Kalidas Marg. From 20th of this month, there is going to be the budget session. So this entire area from Chief Minister's residence to the Vidhan Sabha, entire area is being looked into, is being cordoned off, and more details are awaited. But as of now, it seems more to be a case of a hoax call rather than being an actual case of a bomb scare.
Right, it seems like a hoax, but of course the law enforcement agencies are not going to take any risks given that it's no ordinary politician. It's in fact the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath. We are given to understand that apart from the already existing police force there, reinforcements are also being sent. Are we also going to be seeing some top officers there on the spot?
Well, see, UP Chief Minister is already an NSG protectee, and therefore he has one inner circle which is managed by the Central Paramilitary Force Commandos. And then, of course, there is this entire outer cordon security, which is, of course, being enhanced. And as I told you, keeping the vulnerability of the Chief Minister, the fact that, he has a lot many terror threats from terrorist organizations. So the entire stretch is closed. So no common person, no person without a business, without due sanction or permissions can actually venture onto the Kalidas Marg. The entire stretch is guarded by the armed constables and gates from either side, the two axes which it has. So this location where this spot has been found is at the Golf Club crossing, but the security, of course, is being enhanced. There is already a detailed, protocol as far as the Chief Minister's security is concerned, Yogi Adityanath's security is concerned. Inner circle is managed by the NSG. Outer circle is managed by the commandos of the UP police, and then the third cordon is of course the policemen who are the part of the Lucknow Police Commissionerate. So it's a three-tier security in which, of course, the more cops are now being sent to ensure that the entire operation is conducted peacefully, and also to have a better preparation as far as the days ahead are concerned.
Sure. Prajna, just to put this in perspective for our viewers who are just joining in and for the benefit of our viewers, to put in perspective the location of where exactly this unclaimed bag was found, we're given to understand that it was not right outside the residence but a few meters down the road.
Yes, that's right. See, as I told you, that this entire Kalidas Marg area is cordoned off. It's not a public road, so no one can access it. No common person, at least. Only people who have a prior appointment at the Chief Minister's residence, or are the senior politicians whose bungalows are also close by or on the Kalidas Marg. Only those people can exist. So no one without the business can actually go onto the Kalidas Marg. The location which we are being told is somewhere near the golf club. Now, golf club is a place which is exactly in center between the road that leads to the Lamartine Boys College and also to the Kalidas Marg College. It is somewhere here where this spot is to be said, where an unclaimed bag sort of thing has been found. No officer as such as of now has clarified as to what is the exact nature of the object which has been found, whether it's a briefcase, whether it's a handbag, what it is, whether, what sort of device or what sort of object it is. The message we got just now is that, there is a bomb call, probably triggered after some unclaimed object was found there. And the bomb disposal squad is there at the moment to basically ascertain that what is there inside the bag. So officers talking off record say that most likely the circumstances suggest that it's probably a hoax call. But since it's a call which is coming in from a very VVIP area, the Kalidas Marg, where the bungalow number 5 is the official residence of the Chief Minister, therefore no risks are being taken, and the entire protocol is being followed. Meanwhile, the security also has been enhanced.
Right, do keep a track of what transpires there. But for the moment, Pranshu, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that. With that, it's time for a quick break here on this edition, but lots lined up for you on Nation at 5, so don't go anywhere.
Why is it that we're not seeing, if not a coalition, at least a grouping of these smaller countries that are affected by China's high-handed behavior in the high seas, coming together to collectively take on this bully?
Because forming a coalition against China of this kind presents a formidable challenge, because first, the smaller countries are dissuaded from joining any anti-China coalition, and even the big powers, if you take the United States, Australia, they're not willing to join or form an openly anti-China coalition. In fact, the Quad, despite its maritime focus, is no longer really focused on the maritime challenges in the Indian Ocean region or in the larger Indo-Pacific region, because under Biden, the Quad increasingly has been saddled with a global agenda. It's looking, it's if you look at the working groups that the Quad has established since last year, or in fact since 2021, since the time that Biden took office, the working groups are focused on climate change.
Correct.
Climate change, things like resilient supply chains or other global issues. And given the fact that the Quad is only a four-nation strategic coalition, it is in no position to deal with universal challenges. Its focus ought to be on the maritime challenges in the Indo-Pacific, but that original agenda has got diluted.
All right.
With global issues being taken on board.
Arunachal Irani, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how the story plays out. For the moment, thank you very much for joining us on Brass Tacks. The Navy Chief of India has flagged off a grave concern, the fact that India urgently needs to amp up its presence in the Indian Ocean region. He says there is far too much Chinese activity in the IOR and India needs to get its act together. We will get into the merits and demerits of what is fast becoming the latest theatre in the Indo-China great power rivalry. But first, what the Navy Chief said.
There are Chinese naval ships also operating, there are Chinese warships, there are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers.
All right, first let's get you that exclusive interview with the Navy Chief, Admiral R. Hari Kumar, on the threat of the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean region.
We as the resident naval power in this region, we keep track of all the activities that are happening. There are Chinese naval ships also operating, there are Chinese warships, there are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers. And the prosperity at sea is dependent upon peace, tranquility, our ability to use the oceans in a free, open and in compliance with the rule of law and so on. So that is what we try to achieve, and it is something which cannot be achieved just by one navy alone. It has to be done in cooperation and collaboration as well as coordination with all the navies in the region.
So the presence of China's People's Liberation Army Navy in the Indian Ocean has been growing steadily. The deployment of submarines along with survey and hydrographic ships has become a regular feature since 2017. That's when the PLAN top naval survey ship, the type 636A hydrographic survey ship, was surveying the waters off the coast of the Indian Ocean. In 2018, the PLAN's modern type 625C Xi'an 3 oceanographic survey ship surveyed the Makran Trench, this is in the Persian Gulf. That same year, the Xiangyang Hong 10 was deployed in the Indian Ocean region. Since 2019, Chinese survey ships like the Xiangyang Hong 3 have surveyed the deep waters of the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. China has also deployed a fleet of underwater drones in the Indian Ocean region, which can be used for military applications to get better sonar performance of Chinese submarines, as well as to improve their detection capabilities. So, how exactly do these Chinese submarines enter the Indian Ocean region? Typically, they use the Malacca, the Lombok, or the Sunda Straits to reach the Indian Ocean. The Sunda Straits are very shallow, and the active presence of fishing vessels makes it rather difficult to navigate these waters. The Lombok Strait is deep enough for submarines to proceed in their normal mode of navigation. And when it comes to the Malacca Straits, of course, Chinese submarines have to navigate on the surface to ensure navigation safety. It is also the busiest trade route connecting Europe to Asia, so that is a factor as well. Now, incidents of Chinese spy vessels in Indian waters has become a routine affair in the last few years. In November last year, the Yuan Wang 6 had entered the Indian Ocean just days before India was to conduct a ballistic missile test from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In August of last year, the Yuan Wang 5 was spotted in the China-leased Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. This led to a direct spat between New Delhi and Colombo. The Yuan Wang class of ships are used to track satellites and intercontinental ballistic missile launches. In January of 2021, a Chinese survey ship named Shangyang Hong 3 was also seen operating in the Indian Ocean. Now, China has become more and more assertive about its national and maritime security interests in the Indian Ocean region. The deployment of such ships highlights scant Chinese respect for peace in international waters. China believes that it needs to keep a watch on the activities of India in the Indian Ocean because it is a major regional player in this part of the world as well. China thinks that its interests lie in protecting the geo-economic architecture created as a result of its Belt and Road Initiative, in which these sea lanes are important. The People's Liberation Army Navy is also known to patrol the Indian Ocean as part of Beijing's Far Seas.
Welcome back. Two US senators have teamed up to introduce a bipartisan resolution reaffirming America's recognition of Arunachal Pradesh as an integral part of India. Now, this resolution supports India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It also condemns China for the use of military force to change the status quo at the line of actual control, its continued provocations, even lauding the Indian government for the steps it has taken to defend itself against this aggression. Now, this is perhaps for the first time that we are seeing such a resolution come to the fore. Of course, it has only been introduced, not passed by the Senate, but it is a start. The resolution also states that Chinese provocations impede poverty elevation and economic development in Arunachal Pradesh. Some very strong words there coming to the fore as far as this resolution goes, which has been introduced by two US senators, co-sponsored by another. Sushant Serene, Senior Fellow at the ORF, joining me on this broadcast for more perspective on this and why this really is significant. Now, there are several observations that have been made in this particular resolution, Sushant Serene, as far as China's belligerence is concerned. And US very well knows that it's not just India where China can't seem to keep its hands off borders that are not meant to be transgressed. We've seen their kind of aggression in several other areas with several other small island nations as well. This is extremely important because perhaps for the first time we've seen China, India, Arunachal Pradesh come up in the political circles in the United States. Kashmir often does come up, but China perhaps for the first time?
Yeah, Kashmir has come up and it hasn't always been in our favor in the sense
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Sushant Serene. We'll come back to you, but we have a big piece of information that's just trickling in. We're given to understand that Income Tax Department is carrying out survey operations in Delhi and Mumbai again. We're given to understand that this statement has now come out, in fact, over the survey that was conducted by the Income Tax Department for about 3 days at the BBC offices. The survey action is under the section 133A of the income tax is what the statement reads. It was carried at the business premises of a group entities of prominent international media company both in Delhi and Mumbai. We're given to understand that the Income Tax Department is now saying that the survey has revealed that despite substantial consumption of content in various Indian languages, the income or the profits that were shown by various of these entities is not commensurate with the scale of its operations in India. It was also found during the survey that the department gathered several evidences pertaining to the operation of the organization which indicate that tax has not been paid on certain remittances which have not been disclosed by this particular group, which is the BBC. So several allegations there have been made. It was a 3-day survey that was conducted by the Income Tax Department on the BBC, both in Delhi and Mumbai. Now the statement is out. There are several transgressions by the BBC, Delhi and Mumbai offices, by the India arm, in fact, is what the Income Tax Department alleges. Akanksha, my colleague, I believe, is joining us with more details of that particular statement. Yes, Akanksha.
Absolutely, Poonam. As you rightly mentioned, there's been a press release over here by the Income Tax Department. It's important to talk or highlight the gist of that. The gist says that the BBC, despite catering to various Indian languages, remember the BBC doesn't just publish in English, there are various Indian languages that it publishes. And so the income that the BBC has shown is in disparity with the one that's shown on paper. And let me also take our viewers through what that press release by the Income Tax Department states. Primarily, it says that the survey revealed despite substantial consumption of content in various Indian languages, apart from English, the income profits shown by various group entities is not commensurate with the scale of operations in India. Remember, that means that the income that's shown is not corresponding with the kind of operations they have within the country that is India. Now, during the course of the survey, the department gathered several evidences pertaining to the operation of the organization which indicate that tax has not been paid on certain remittances which have not been disclosed as income in India by foreign entities of the group. And remember, they have very solid evidence to back these claims. They've gone on to say that there has been, sufficient data that they have retrieved from laptops, through various documents. It's also gone on to say that the group is engaged in the business of development of content in English, Hindi, and various other languages, advertisement sales, and market support services as well. It's talking about how the survey operation resulted in unearthing of crucial evidences by way of statement of employees. So remember, there's not just digital evidences and documents which have furthered this examination in the due course, but even statements of employees. Remember, just a couple of days ago, we've seen the income tax surveying in the offices of BBC, namely in the national capital and also Mumbai. And now we are seeing this press release which very clearly sort of defines the way the BBC's income on paper is very much not corresponding with the kind of surveys, with the kind of operations they are conducting in India. It's back to you.
Right, Akanksha, thank you so much for getting us the details or the excerpts of that particular statement that has now been put out. Sushant Serene continues to be with us on this broadcast. And Sushant Serene, when the raid started, we saw the kind of clamour, especially from the opposition parties here in India. They said this was nothing but harassment, especially after the BBC documentary on Prime Minister Modi and the Gujarat riots. But there are some specific allegations that the income tax is now making, and they say that after these particular surveys over the last 3 days, we have more details, we have more facts on record that go on to show that there is some amount of discrepancy as far as the income of BBC goes.
So Poonam, here is the thing, as far as the IT department's claims against BBC are concerned, I think that is something which is a very technical thing. I'm not a chartered accountant, so I'm not really competent to comment on that. But what concerns me is the fact that the government has sent certain notices for over 3 years. The BBC has consistently ignored those notices, not responded to them, almost as though they think that they enjoy some kind of an impunity. And this is a problem in a country like India, that people in the media actually think that they enjoy impunity against normal legal processes. That if there is a taxation claim against them, then it is always couched as some kind of a witch hunt which is being carried out against them. Ideally, what should happen is that if the taxation department or any other government department issues a notice, as anybody else, media organizations should respond to it. But out here, they have behaved as though now this is a matter of the freedom of the press, which clearly it isn't. You can't be evading taxes, you can't be avoiding taxes and then claim impunity simply because you are a media organization of the former colonial master of India, and you still have this colonial hangover and a colonial chip on your shoulder. And a whole lot of the other people in the journalistic community actually kowtow to you. So I think that is something which, which really concerns me, whether we've actually decolonized our brains from, the old colonial hangover which we have.
Sure.
And it doesn't seem like that has happened. So whatever the claims of the income tax department are, I think I'm sure they're going to be challenged. There will be the normal legal processes that will be followed. And that, we'll decide what comes to it. Even though whichever way the legal case goes, that does not mean that the government is not entitled to either carry out raids, and in this particular case, a tax survey of an organization which has been blatantly flouting, notices, has been ignoring the notices which have been issued to them. And I don't see why anybody should have any problem with this kind of a survey being carried out.
Absolutely. No one is above accountability, and that's something that the central government has also been saying, even though the opposition has been trying to corner them. Ashish Mehershi, my colleague, joins us on this broadcast. But let me take this across to political editor Maria Shakil as well. And Maria, like we were discussing, the opposition has been raising all sorts of questions, calling this survey nothing but vendetta politics, nothing but vindictive action by the government. But this statement that has now been put forth by the Income Tax Department goes on to make some specific and very damning allegations against the BBC.
Yes, that's right. And what the Income Tax Department is saying is, and this is of course regarding the surveys that were carried out by the IT department officials, both in Delhi and Mumbai, they are essentially talking about how there has been unearthing of crucial evidence by way of statements of employees, some digital evidences that have been collected, and also documents which will be further put to examination in due course. They have gone on to say that the income profit shown by the various group entities is not commensurate with the scale of operations in India, and that if anything, that this is purely a process of law which is being followed by the Income Tax Department. This is what the Income Tax Department is saying. But having said that, Poonam, look, this is playing in the domain of politics, where the entire opposition is united against the government. The Press Council of India and the Editors Guild, all of them have issued statements saying that this is muzzling of press. While the Income Tax Department so far, which has put out a statement, clearly says that this is an ongoing investigation, more to do with their multiple notices that they have served in the past. This should be seen more as a survey, not as a raid. But because it is being linked to the BBC documentary, which came out a few weeks ago, so the editorial policy of the BBC is under the scanner. But as far as this investigation is concerned, it remains to be seen whether it will be anything here, because as far as the government is concerned, Poonam, the government has not issued a statement. What we have picked up purely from sources in the government was that it had to do with discrepancies, that it had to do with the transfer pricing documents, and that there was a relevant function, asset and risk analysis, which were incorrect use of comparable, which are, applicable to determine the correct arm's length price, and inadequate revenue appointments. That's what it had suggested to us. And if you look at the statement that has been issued by the Income Tax Department, it has elaborated that the searches are over now, the entire survey is over. This is what their finding is.
Yes, these findings are now out in public domain. That statement has been accessed here on CNN News 18. Ashish Mehershi, my colleague, also joining us for more on this. Now, Ashish, we've seen these surveys take place both in Mumbai and in Delhi on BBC offices. The allegations against BBC are extremely clear as far as this statement goes. Profit was underreported by the BBC, says the Income Tax Department. Tax on some remittances is also unpaid. Whether the income adds up or not is also something that Income Tax Department is looking into. What more have you gathered from your sources within the department?
So, it's not only about the transfer pricing issue. One thing is for sure that it's not only about transfer pricing issue. There are many more issues which are coming to light after the survey. Most important is that it says that there is basically suppressing of income or suppressing of profits, where the Income Tax Department has found that apart from English, there are various other languages in which the content is produced. And interestingly, this content, the books show that there is hardly any profit. So here the Income Tax Department doubts that, the kind of profit that the BBC would have generated, they would have suppressed into the books of accounts, and that is why they have come under scrutiny. Second is that, there is, it looks to be that there is a violation of the withholding tax as well. Reason being that seconded employees, employees which are not really a part of BBC but are seconded employees, they have been used by the BBC, and foreign remittances have been made. Again, then it looks to be that there is a violation of the withholding tax. Thirdly, then it comes that it talks about the the transfer pricing issue as well. So here again, the transfer pricing issue which has come to light, yes, earlier as well, that this survey actually happened because the clause of transfer pricing got invoked only because there was certain notices that were issued to the BBC, but again, the BBC did not respond to those issues, and that is why this transfer pricing issue came to light, and it seems to be that there is a massive violation by the BBC. So certainly, it's for the first time because the 3 days continuously the survey happened and everybody was anticipating some response from the Central Board of Direct Taxes, which is the body which controls the income tax department. And here is their response. It says that it's not only about transfer pricing, it's also about violation of the withholding tax.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you there, Ashish. I'll come back to you, but Congress's Charan Singh Sapra also joining us on this broadcast. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18, sir. How do you respond now? Some very damning allegations being made against the BBC when the opposition claimed that this was nothing but vendetta.
See, we are yet not knowing what are the exact findings of income tax raids on BBC. The factual thing is that BBC has a rational revenue model and they don't depend on the advertisements. But since the IT department is saying they have got some papers in the raid, I feel they'll have to substantiate in the court of law. Let us wait and see. It is prima facie, it is too early without knowing what papers they have got or what irregularities are there. I feel let us know the irregularities and then we might be able to conclude something.
Sure, there are some irregularities that have been mentioned, Charan Singh Sapra, in this particular statement, like remittances not being disclosed as income on some, the fact that some of the income does not add up because there are several wings, not just English, as far as the publication of BBC goes. Many of the profits were underreported is also what this statement says. Do you then think the opposition did jump the gun when they made these allegations against the centre and the IT department?
No, not at all. There are a number of cases, like, in the case of 2G or the Colgate scam, the BJP had said 1,76,000 crore scam is there, but nothing came out of it. So I feel whatever the IT department has got, they have to substantiate with proof in the court, and maybe later on we'll be able to comment on that.
Sure. Charan Singh Sapra, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. With that, it's a wrap from me on this edition on Nation at 5. But news and updates continue here on CNN News 18. Don't go anywhere.
Indo-Pacific, but that original agenda has got diluted.
All right.
With global issues being taken on board.
Brahmacharani, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how the story plays out. For the moment, thank you very much for joining us on Brass Tacks. The Navy Chief of India has flagged off a grave concern, the fact that India urgently needs to amp up its presence in the Indian Ocean region. He says there is far too much Chinese activity in the IOR and India needs to get its act together. We will get into the merits and demerits of what is fast becoming the latest theatre in the Indo-China great power rivalry. But first, what the Navy Chief said.
There are Chinese naval ships also operating, there are Chinese warships, there are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers.
All right, first let's get you that exclusive interview with the Navy Chief, Admiral R. Hari Kumar, on the threat of the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean region.
We as a resident naval power in this region, we keep track of all the activities that are happening. There are Chinese naval ships also operating, there are Chinese warships, there are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers. And the prosperity at sea is dependent upon peace, tranquility, our ability to use the oceans in a free, open and in compliance with the rule of law and so on. So that is what we try to achieve, and it is something which cannot be achieved just by one navy alone. It has to be done in cooperation and collaboration as well as coordination with all the navies in the region.
So the presence of China's People's Liberation Army Navy in the Indian Ocean has been growing steadily. The deployment of submarines along with survey and hydrographic ships has become a regular feature since 2017. That's when the PLAN top naval survey ship, the type 636A hydrographic survey ship, was surveying the waters off the coast of the Indian Ocean. In 2018, the PLAN's modern type 625C Xi'an 3 oceanographic survey ship surveyed the Makran Trench, this is in the Persian Gulf. That same year, the Xiangyang Hong 10 was deployed in the Indian Ocean region. Since 2019, Chinese survey ships like the Xiangyang Hong 3 have surveyed the deep waters of the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. China has also deployed a fleet of underwater drones in the Indian Ocean region, which can be used for military applications to get better sonar performance of Chinese submarines, as well as to improve their detection capabilities. So, how exactly do these Chinese submarines enter the Indian Ocean region? Typically, they use the Malacca, the Lombok, or the Sunda Straits to reach the Indian Ocean. The Sunda Straits are very shallow, and the active presence of fishing vessels makes it rather difficult to navigate these waters. The Lombok Strait is deep enough for submarines to proceed in their normal mode of navigation. And when it comes to the Malacca Straits, of course, Chinese submarines have to navigate on the surface to ensure navigation safety. It is also the busiest trade route connecting Europe to Asia, so that is a factor as well. Now, incidents of Chinese spy vessels in Indian waters has become a routine affair in the last few years. In November last year, the Yuan Wang 6 had entered the Indian Ocean just days before India was to conduct a ballistic missile test from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In August of last year, the Yuan Wang 5 was spotted in the China-leased Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. This led to a direct spat between New Delhi and Colombo. The Yuan Wang class of ships are used to track satellites and intercontinental ballistic missile launches. In January of 2021, a Chinese survey ship named Xiangyang Hong 3 was also seen operating in the Indian Ocean. Now, China has become more and more assertive about its national and maritime security interests in the Indian Ocean region. The deployment of such ships highlights scant Chinese respect for peace in international waters. China believes that it needs to keep a watch on the activities of India in the Indian Ocean because it is a major regional player in this part of the world as well. China thinks that its interests lie in protecting the geo-economic architecture created as a result of its Belt and Road Initiative, in which these sea lanes are important. The People's Liberation Army Navy is also known to patrol the Indian Ocean as part of Beijing's Far Seas protection strategy. Routine patrols are also undertaken on the pretext of anti-piracy missions. Now, no navy has grown as rapidly as the Chinese Navy in recent times. So how does India stack up against the PLA Navy? When it comes to number of personnel, the Indian Navy has a little over 140,000, whereas the Chinese have over 300,000. In terms of fleet strength, the Indian Navy has just a shade under 300 warships. China has more than 700. The Indian Navy has 18 submarines as of right now, whereas the Chinese Navy has more than 3 times that. When it comes to aircraft carriers, both navies have 2 each. The Indian Navy has 11 destroyers and the Chinese have 50. But it's not just India. China has been showing its high-handed behavior with other navies as well, and not just in the Indian Ocean region. In 2012, China took control of the Scarborough Shoal. That's a disputed territory claimed by both China and the Philippines. This was after a massive standoff with the Philippines Navy. In 2014, a Chinese oil rig was placed in waters claimed by Vietnam. It led to a confrontation between Chinese and Vietnamese fishing vessels. In 2016, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel rammed into a Vietnamese fishing boat in disputed waters, leading to protests from the Vietnamese government. In 2018, a Chinese naval ship entered Indonesian waters without permission, leading to a diplomatic protest. China has also increased its military presence around Taiwan, which it considers to be a renegade province. And joining me now is Professor Brahmachalani. He's a strategic affairs expert and also a very close China watcher. I want to first ask you about what the Navy chief said, and how would you compare the current state of equations when it comes to the Indian Ocean region between the Indian and Chinese navies? How can India qualitatively up its game in the IOR?
The Indian Ocean is a bridge between Asia and Europe. It's also the world's premier energy and freight seaway. And China's growing interest in the Indian Ocean draws strength from its aggressive expansionism in the adjacent South China Sea. In the South China Sea, China has redrawn the geopolitical map incrementally. And I think it's very important to look at the challenge that China is beginning to mount against India in the Indian Ocean in a historical context. China became India's neighbor only in 1950-51 by gobbling up the buffer Tibet.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. There's been fierce politics in India over the Adani-Hindenburg report. Just as the dust seems to be settling, a storm has picked up again. A storm caused by billionaire investor and controversial figure George Soros. Soros, who runs the Open Society Foundation, said that Narendra Modi will have to answer on the Adani group and that the Hindenburg report will weaken Modi's stranglehold on the Indian federal government. Now, why is Soros so interested in India and in Indian government? And why has he been so keen to affect a government change in India? One of the biggest things Soros does is run the Open Society. The literal aim of this society, as mentioned on its own website, is to, quote, build vibrant and inclusive democracies whose governments are accountable to their people, unquote. Now, who are they to build democracy? And that too around the world. Also, how are they going to do it? How do we know that their judgment is going to be fair? After all, Soros is also an investor, a hedge fund manager, short seller, and not just a philanthropist. Why do they want to meddle in governance? Open Society has presence in 120 countries. It doesn't have an office in India, but you don't really need to have one. You can always do what you want sitting outside of India. Its own website states the Open Society Foundations give thousands of grants to groups and individuals who promote their values through a unique network that is guided by local voices and global expertise. With his recent speech, it has become clear that Soros is very much interested in India and he doesn't like the current government. Has an anti-Modi lobby thus been exposed, especially as we've been discussing the impact of foreign firms or groups in domestic politics? How will this entire battle play out before the 2024 general elections? Will the attacks on the current Prime Minister and the government only increase? We'll take those questions to our guests in just a bit, but first, this is what Soros has said in his latest charge against Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Charge number 1 is that Modi and Tycoon Adani are close allies, that Narendra Modi will have to answer Indian Parliament and foreign investors over the Hindenburg report. This report is leading, he says, to much needed institutional reforms in India. He also goes on to say that this will weaken Modi's stranglehold on India's federal government. Note the word stranglehold, because it's not like Narendra Modi is some outsider. He is the Prime Minister of the country. Who else is supposed to have a control of the federal government? And the final charge, the big takeaway from what he has said recently is that this Adani crisis will result in a revival of democracy, he says. He hopes so. The BJP was quick to pick this up and hit back. Here is what Smriti Irani, Union Minister, said against George Soros. So attack number 1 that came from the BJP is that a war is being mounted against India's democratic processes. That Soros has pronounced his desire to demonize our democracy. She went on to say the imperialistic intention of an entrepreneur have come to light. Also, the BJP says that Soros is a designated economic war criminal. And finally, that he wants a government in India to make his nefarious plans successful. The Congress also got caught in this BJP versus Soros crossfire, by the way. Congress media cell head Jairam Ramesh tactfully tried to distance himself from the party. So he went on to say that, whether the Adani issue sparks a democratic revival in the country depends entirely on the grand old party and other opposition parties. And it has nothing to do with billionaire investor George Soros. But another party face and a close aide of Rahul Gandhi, Praveen Chakravarti, seemed to promote Soros's views. He quoted him and retweeted a report mentioning what Soros had said. But as it usually happens, things got worse for the Congress party. BJP put out pictures of Salil Shetty, Vice President Global of the Open Society Foundations, walking side by side with Rahul Gandhi in the recently concluded Bharat Jodo Yatra. One wonders how the Congress will explain this link that has come to light. But back to Soros. This isn't the first time Soros has spoken on India or against the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In January 2020, this was big news at the time, Soros had pledged $1 billion for a global university. The university was formed, quote, to fight nationalists, which they may term as authoritarian government. Soros had accused Narendra Modi of, quote, creating Hindu nationalist state in the past. And the Indian government has put OSF, the Open Society Foundations, on a watch list as far back as 2016. Now let me come to the heart of this debate, Soros's links with Indians. First is NGO called Namati, based in Washington. Now, Soros and Nobel laureate Amartya Sen are part of the NGO's advisory council. Just a reminder of what Amartya Sen has said as recently as January 2023. While referring to an atmosphere of intolerance in India, he said it won't last long. In the past, he has asked people to come together to vote the BJP out. That was before the 2019 election. Then there is the link to Harsh Mandar. He is the head of a research group, a social activist, probably best known for being part of the National Advisory Council under the UPA. Mandar has served as advisory board member of the OSF itself from 2020 to 2022. Remember, Mandar is linked to violence around Jamia in the national capital in December 2019 and the anti-CA protests. His name was mentioned in the chart sheet. Basharat Peer is a writer and author. He served as Open Society Fellow from 2009 to 2010. Let me just quote what he has written in the past. In 2010, for example, he wrote, Indian troops are killing Kashmiri protesters. Lawyers Collective, an NGO headed by Indira Jaising and Anand Grover. The FCRA license of the Lawyers Collective was cancelled over donations from Soros Foundations. They allegedly received as much as 4 crore rupees from the Soros Foundation. So the big question we're asking today is, ahead of the 2024 battle, is it now clear and established that there is indeed an anti-Modi lobby? It is a global lobby, and a lot of things are being done with a lot of these individuals and their hands together. We'll debate that in just a bit.
George Soros, an international entrepreneur, has now declared his ill intentions to intervene in the democratic processes of India, where the imperialistic intentions of an entrepreneur come to light.
Let's go across to the guests who are joining us. Anurag Sharma is BJP MP in the Lok Sabha. Javed Ansari is senior journalist. Advaita Kala, author and political analyst. Anand Mittal is also a political analyst, joining us from USA, Washington, D.C. And Ashok Sajjanhar is former diplomat. The Congress has refused to be part of a discussion on this issue. Let me begin with Anurag Sharma. The party BJP has come out very openly questioning George Soros, and I think this is the first time the BJP has done so. The other day, the BJP spokesperson also vociferously came out and actually termed the BBC, for example, a brushed bakwas corporation. It seems you are willing to now go full frontal against all of these organizations that you believe are anti-Modi. Am I right?
No, we are going against all the organizations which are anti-India, anti the India First story. All these organizations have, at some point of time or the other, tried to intervene and affect our own democratic processes. Mr. Soros, who has been an economic offender, designated an economic offender by the British government, has constantly had a narrative against India. So this is a purely anti-India thing.
But what would you say to those? What would you say to those that actually, if you look at, for example, the BBC's recent documentary, and you look at what George Soros says, they're against Mr. Modi. They're not so much against India.
He has categorically mentioned the anti-India stance. He's categorically said over time and again that his there isn't a democratic process being followed. In all this, we followed a process. And there has been a rule of law. They are unfortunately used to a system, the rule of law has not been followed, where patronage was given to foreign companies, patronage was given to some of their old friends like Mr. George Soros by the Congress ecosystem, and that entire ecosystem is now trying to build an anti-India narrative just to help the Congress. It's unfortunate, and repeatedly they will target Mr. Modi because the Honorable Prime Minister leads India, but it's primarily an anti-India narrative where they're trying to strengthen the anti-India forces, and what they're trying to do is weaken our democratic process.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that outside people are trying to now interfere in the Indian
the fact
elections.
That a lot of
the
these are
Indian
outsiders, they claim to have views of what should not happen in India. I just recently debated, for example, what the likes of the Times, the Economist, you've heard NYT, etc. Others have said, not said. And yes, many may make an argument that as far back as the 1970s, people have been upset with the BBC for the kind of coverage it does of India, and similarly of many global organizations. Javed Ansari, I'm coming to you as a journalist. Don't you believe that this does indeed prove what the BJP has been harping upon? That there is indeed, you may not like to say anti-India, but an anti-Modi lobby which has global ties that is fixated on ensuring he doesn't come back to power.
Look, no global agency, no agency outside India can either ensure that Mr. Modi comes back for a third term or ensure that he does not come back for a third term. They can't make an iota of difference, whether it is a billionaire or a trillionaire, whoever it is. No outsider can make a difference. You don't have to be a supporter or opposed to Mr. Modi. The fact is that as Indians, nobody can dictate to us. Nobody can dictate either which way. Whether people vote for Modi or they do not vote for Modi, they will decide in their own wisdom, not